Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Go Big or Go Home. I'm Old Man Troy, joined by the spectacular youngster, Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. Another day, another Big Ten day, my friend. It is all Big Ten football. One preview show in the books, another starting right now. Before we get into that, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing good. Worked and wrote about the Big Ten, and now I get off work, and now I talk about the Big Ten. So it's all Big Ten for me from this point going forward for a while. So I'm excited. I mean, while I'm writing Big Ten stuff and, watching, listening, I've got fantasy football stuff on in the background, like, constantly. And speaking of fantasy football, Troy and I are doing a 20-team league on ESPN. It is free. The draft is for September 1st at 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to be there for the draft, obviously that's great. You don't have to. Again, the league is free. It's a 20-team PPR league on ESPN. So if you go check out any of our social media stuff, at youngster old man, Twitter, Facebook, it'll be on there. So at youngster old man, just click on the link. It's the pinned tweet at the top. Click the link. You're in. It's free. So, again.
And you know what, youngster? I'm probably going to be, live for, the first 4 rounds. And then after that, I might just let the computer pick the best available player. I mean, it's a 20-team league. And, I was at a work meeting today, and I was, talking to some of the guys that know I do radio. And they're like, What's going on radio? I said, hey, you want to join a 20-team fantasy league? 20 teams?
Yeah.
There's not going to be anybody to pick from. I said, there's people to pick from. You just got to be very strategic. You have to know your crap.
Yeah.
So not to scare anybody away, but it's for fun. You're not losing any money.
Right.
And the winner youngster gets to co-host our Super Bowl preview show. And then every week, the top point winner gets to come on the show and brag about how great they are and how moronic you and I are.
Yeah.
Because like I said, my goal is to finish in 19th place, not 20th. I just want to finish in 19th. You, on the other hand, being a fantasy football guru, I know you want to win. Yeah. I just don't want to finish 20th.
Understandable. Yeah. I'm going for first, as most people would. But I understand that, as long as you don't finish last, that's also a mentality. That's part of my mentality for something. Just don't come in last. You'll be fine. So, especially a free fantasy football league, even if you do come in last, really doesn't matter.
So, no, it doesn't matter. And I'll be hosting the show no matter what, so I don't really need to win.
Yeah. Yep. So,
I do want to brag, though, 1 week. I just want to be the top point getter 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
Just to brag 1 week. That's it. But there's going to be a lot of bragging going on in the West this year in the Big Ten, my friend. A lot of it, and I think it might be a roller coaster. Last week we previewed 4 teams. Today, Purdue, Wisconsin, Northwestern to round out the West. And so far, the way we're looking at it is this division is pretty wide open this year. There's a lot of teams that are good. There's no great team that's going to throttle everyone, and you still got to go on the road to play in the Big Ten, which is a hard task. So it's going to be an exciting year, my friend. But take it away. Let's get started.
Yeah, it is. Last week's show, again, check out growingtruths.com if you'd like to listen to that. We featured the bottom 4 teams from the Big West division on last week's show. And so last week we went from the bottom up: Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa. And the way we break this up doesn't make too much sense for this year because 6 of these 7 Big Ten West teams realistically could win the division. Illinois can't. Otherwise, the other 6 teams, you could make your argument if things break certain teams' way, they could win the division. And 5 of these 7 teams got first place votes in some reputable poll that basically everyone goes by. I don't even remember what it is. But point being, all these teams outside of Illinois are on an even playing field, really. People think Northwestern is going to take a huge step back, which if they do, that's fine, but they were 8-1 in the conference a year ago. So if you take a huge step back to 5-4, that's what Wisconsin finished. That's what Purdue finished. Those are the three teams we're going to talk about today, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Purdue, the top three from the Big Ten West a year ago. So, again, we'll continue bottom up, and then next week we'll start with the bottom four on the Big Ten East side, and then finish with the top three right before the regular season starts. But so, again, last week's show at thegruelingtruth.com, if you want to hear about Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, Illinois coming into this season. Today's show, Purdue, Wisconsin, Northwestern, we'll start with Purdue. And they finished 5-4 in conference. Go ahead.
I just want to throw it out there again so the fans understand this is not our ranking show. So the way that we're going over the preview is based on 2018 standings.
Right.
So when we say number one Northwestern, it was number one in 2018.
Right.
The youngster and I haven't put together, this team's going to win the division, blah, blah, blah. We're going it off last year's standings. So I don't want anybody thinking we automatically are putting people in these slots. So we were strategic about doing it this way. But, yeah, here we go. Purdue, 5-4 last year, Kevin. Little quarterback situation last year.
Yeah. David Blau was the quarterback a year ago that beat out Elijah Sindelar, and Blau ended up winning the job and doing well offensively. Jeff Brom likes to throw the football, and that's what Blau could do. And so Blau has gone and graduated, and so now it's Sindelar's turn. A year ago, they finished 6-7. They did make a bowl game, though. They finished 5-4 in the Big Ten. So they did well in conference, which there's something to be said there. And it was Brom's second year a year ago, and there was a ton of talk after the year ended, actually before the year ended, about him possibly going to Louisville and becoming the head coach there, which makes sense because he certainly has ties to Louisville, and he turned Louisville down. And he said, no, I'm going to stay at Purdue, which is interesting because you would...
Smart move.
You would think that... I think of Louisville football, I think of Purdue football. Obviously, there's different identities there, but I think they're pretty much on an even playing field. And hopefully that car agrees with me in the back, Troy. But I
you like that?
Louisville, I did. Louisville, Purdue, I think it's kind of an even move. If you were to go to Louisville from Purdue, or you were to go to Purdue from Louisville, and so someone whose alma mater is Louisville and who has strong ties to Louisville, I was surprised when he stuck at Purdue. But he is truly growing Purdue. He is getting guys in the system that he loves, and Rondale Moore was a freshman wide receiver a year ago who did unbelievable things. And as a sophomore, people are expecting, again, for him to do unbelievable things. I think he was a second-team All-American last year as a freshman. He might have been first. I don't even remember. But he put up, an insane amount of highlights, insane amount of yards, insane amount of touchdowns. That's what Purdue wants to do, is throw the football, and you get a great receiver like this who's electrifying and faster than basically everyone else, and he's going to do well. So he stood out a year ago. This team last season was 11th in passing. They were 104th in rushing, which obviously you want to be better than 104th in rushing, but again, this is kind of Brom's and Purdue's way. That we're really getting to, this is not a team without an identity. This is a team that wants to throw the football, wants to have elite athletes on the outside, wants to have a good running back. Like you think of those Baylor teams with Robert Griffin III, those kind of guys, they would throw all over the place, but whenever they did hand the ball off, it would be for like 7 yards to carry because there would be like 5, 6 in the box, 6 max, sometimes 5, because you'd have 4 out wide, you'd have a running back, and it's like, okay, we need, 4 corners, we need a couple safeties. There's only so many guys you can have. So that's basically what Purdue wants to do, is spread you out, get elite athletes, and that's what they've done with Rondale Moore. They got another Rondale Moore type of freshman coming in, which I'll talk about in a second. But Brom is getting the kind of guys he wants to run his system, and he's getting electrifying, first-team All-American type guys right away. So
here's the deal, youngster, with Brom.
Yeah.
He is making an identity at Purdue that goes against what the identity of the Big Ten is.
For sure.
You mentioned the rushing total was 104th.
Mm-hmm.
You think of the Big Ten, you're not thinking about passing teams. You're not thinking about quarterbacks that are lighting up football fields with 300 and 400-yard passing games. But that's what Brom wants to do. So he's kind of bucking the trend and saying, you know what? I know like Wisconsin and Iowa, they're going to build in the trenches. They're going to have good running games. They're going to have game managers at quarterback. No. We're going to make Purdue, and I guess the word flashy isn't the right word, but an electric offense, one that's going to not be afraid to put the ball in the air. And you know what, Kevin? I don't think it's a bad idea by Brom, because you think of the West. Think of the teams in the West. You've got Wisconsin, running team. Iowa, usually good up front. Nebraska, has got an athletic quarterback now, but traditionally it's going to be a running team. The West, to me, Kevin, I don't want to say they're behind the times. Their identity is still get the big uglies up front, control the clock, win games 21-17. Unlike the East, where you got the likes of Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, that are offensively going to be better. The West is traditionally built on defense. Look at all the teams we're talking about, and we're always talking about what can they do defensively. Well, at least when we're talking Northwestern, Wisconsin, Iowa, Brom's looking at it from the standpoint, I'm going to score. I'm going to try to outscore teams. And the thing is, I'm not going to bash him for it. It may not always work, but at least his team has an identity.
Yeah.
And they won 5 games in the Big Ten last year.
Right.
And
they were tied
just
for second.
A little bit different than, the old school Big Ten. So the last thing is, I want to just comment, and I'll turn it back over to you, get a little bit more into Purdue. Brom turning down Louisville, to me, Kevin, was kind of the applause for the Big Ten that they needed. Everything indicates that Brom should be in Louisville. Played there, got ties to Louisville. Like you said, it would be a lateral move. However, he's looking at it from the standpoint, why would I want to go to Louisville and play in a lesser conference? If I can build something at Purdue and have pretty much the same type of results, and then I'm going to look like a hero at Purdue to play in one of the best conferences in America. And to finish 5-4 and in second place with a Purdue team, honestly, Kevin, that surprised me. I didn't think they'd be in second place. 5-4, that's above my expectations from last year. I was thinking under 500 in the conference.
Yeah.
So hats off to him. And now with his system, he's able to go out and recruit guys to play in his system because it's not a false promise. Like if I'm a wide receiver getting recruited by Wisconsin and I'm thinking, okay, really, Paul Chris, you're going to make me, in 10 games a 50, 60 reception guy? I don't think so. Probably not going to happen. At Purdue, hey, you might catch the ball 50 or 60 times. That receiver's going, yeah, I might in this system. So he can get those guys on the outside because it's not a promise just said. It's reality. That's the way he wants to run his offense. So turn it back over to you, youngster.
Yeah, very quickly, I wanted to pull up Rondale Moore's stats. Last year as a freshman, he had 114 catches, which was first in college football. So as a true freshman, he's 5'9". I mean, he's not, 6'6" next Calvin Johnson. He's a 5'9" speedy freshman who's got talent, obviously. But as a true freshman, 114 catches, 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns. I mean, so, yeah, as a true freshman, here you go. Here's your model. There you go. I mean, so you can say you're going to throw the ball all over the place. You can say receivers are going to get a bunch of catches, but unless it happens, then it's kind of like, do I really want to go to Purdue or do I want to go somewhere closer to home, somewhere that I know throws the ball a ton based on past history? And, You saw it a year ago that it's possible. And so that's why he got this huge recruit now. David Bell is his name. And so I'm sure Moore and Bell, just those two receivers alone, are going to have a field day on a number of teams this season. And they're a sophomore and a freshman. But, assuming Elijah Sindelar stays healthy, which was part of the issue last year, part of why he lost a job. So I think that Sindelar can throw the ball. I'm not necessarily worried about that. And I think this team's playmaking abilities on the outside, especially, they've got a good tight end, so they've got pieces to work with. There's no question about it. So what you're getting with Purdue. Is it the smartest thing in the world? I'm not going to say it's not. I'm not going to say it is. To me, you just have to have an identity, and you have to recruit to that identity, and then good things should happen. Like teams that throw the ball all over the place, if you recruit the right guys, it works. If you're Alabama and Alabama's a different story, but if you're a typical Wisconsin team and you do the same thing year after year after year after year after year, you should get good offensive linemen. You should get good running backs. You should get good defensive players because that's what they're known for the last 20 years. And so that's how they keep winning. So you can be this team that throws it all over the place and have success, or you can be this team that just runs it down everyone's throat and have a bunch of success. You have to find some sort of balance somewhere in order to win a true national title. I don't think you can 80% rely on the pass, 80% rely on the run to do everything for you and win a national title, but you can win the Big Ten West. You can win the Big Ten East. You can make the college football playoff, I think. But there has to be at some stage, there has to be some sort of balance to beat, 2-3 elite teams in a row to actually win a title. So, I think any team, once you're really good at running the football, once you're really good at throwing the football, and you bring in a Graham Mertz at Wisconsin, you bring in a 4-star running back at Purdue, you can say, hey, now we actually do have a running threat. Or you're Wisconsin, hey, now we actually do have a quarterback who can throw the ball and stretch the defense and get 7-8 guys out of the box, occasionally at least. So that's the key to me to taking that real next step. But for Purdue this year, just go down the line a little bit, some notes I have. Defensively, they were bad. They were statistically terrible through the air, which is funny because Ohio State, Dwayne Haskins threw the ball all over the place last year, and Purdue stomped them. So it kind of goes to show, statistics are not everything. There are certain games where any team can step up and beat anyone in this conference. I'm not going to say that Rutgers is going to do that, but you get my point. That any of these teams that are on somewhat of an even playing field, basically exclude Rutgers, and any of these teams have a chance to beat anybody. Really. And I think Illinois has got a more veteran-led group. I think they're getting more athletes in there. So they're not as far behind, I think, as Rutgers and as they have been in the past. But so Purdue can beat anybody. Just like 6 of the 7 teams, if not all 7 in this Big Ten West division. That's what makes it so compelling, in my opinion. The other thing, only a couple tackles returned from the offensive lines, the interior of the offensive line, the center, both guards, gone. That won't help. Defensively, their front 7 should be decent. They got a really good linebacker, Marcus Bailey. The secondary is really young. And finally, to go through their schedule a little bit, it's a little rough. You're at Penn State, you're at Iowa, you're at Northwestern, you're at Wisconsin. Those are all 4 losable games. And then at home, you get Minnesota at home, you get Maryland at home, you get Illinois at home, Nebraska at home, Indiana at home. A lot of winnable games there, especially at home. If I randomly had to pick now, I've done this with every team, I would say 7-5. But like you mentioned last week, Troy, you could go through the schedule with some of these teams one time and see 7-5, and I could do this now, live, and come up with 6-6 or 8-4, or make a case for 9-3 or 5-7. That's how close knit it is, especially in the Big Ten West. So,
I think the key for Purdue, Kevin, for them to have and take a step forward. And when I mean take a step forward, it'll be record-wise. The key is quarterback play. I mean, you've got a new young guy in there, and he's got to – I mean, he was the starter, then got hurt. But the thing is, he didn't lead them to that 5-4 conference record. Yeah. So he's got to get reacclimated. There's some new weapons. I don't think there's a real big question offensively with the skill players. But I think the key is going to be, can they establish a running game to not have to rely on the pass?
Yeah.
I mean, look at all the good teams, Kevin, whether it's high school, college, professional. I'm a Packer fan. When Aaron Rodgers has play action, he is unstoppable. And I'm not just being a homer. If the Packers have any resemblance of a run game and you can throw play action into Rodgers' playbook, the guy is unstoppable because it freezes the linebackers.
Yeah.
And it only takes a quarterback of Rodgers' caliber that extra second to find his open receiver. College, a little bit different. You don't have guys with that type of accuracy and that quick of decision-making. But when you have the threat of run, you then can take some of the pressure off your quarterback. And that extra second can be so pivotal. And you mentioned the speedster on the outside. You give him an extra second, hard to cover. So I think their key will be offensively, can they establish a threat of a run? And then you kind of stole my thunder here, Kevin. The big thing on offense, you can have all the skill players in the world, quarterback, receiver, running back. If you don't have a good offensive line, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to have 3 new starters on the interior of that line.
Right.
If you're a Wisconsin Badger fan, you kind of shrug your shoulder and say, oh, well, they recruit well in offensive line. These guys should be just fine. You know, whoever's starting this year, these 5, eventually 3 will get drafted in the NFL. It's the way it works at Wisconsin, right? It's just the way it works. Purdue, I'm not so optimistic.
No.
You know, so you've got 3 guys in the middle, and that center is so pivotal to reading defense, making some line calls. You've got 3 new guys on the inside. So to me, that's going to be the big thing to watch. How well do those 3 guys in the middle of that line mesh? It'll be so important for pass protection and so important to establish that run game. And then, you know, the obvious, they've got to be better on defense. They've got to be better. You know, when you look at this team, Kevin, when they were getting stops last year and then going to this electrifying offense by keeping the ball in the air, they were scoring a ton of points. And it wasn't out of necessity. But then when you get into a game where you can't make a stop and now your offense is forced to go into pass and you have to kind of get away from play action, now, I mean, that's when Purdue ran into trouble. And it wasn't offensively that let them down last year. You mentioned it, 11th in passing. It was defense. The defense was just very inconsistent.
They scored. They scored 30 points a game, and they allowed 30 points a game. So they were 6-6 up until the bowl game, which makes sense. If you're scoring 30 a game, you're giving up 30 a game. Some games will go your way, some games won't. It's not like you had a positive in there. It's not like you averaged 38 and you gave up 24. It was just, our defense is bad, our offense is good. Hopefully it matches up some games, and some games last year it did.
Yeah, because you know as well as I do, Kevin, it's hard to roll through, 13 games and be at an A+ level offensively every game. You're gonna run into a buzzsaw defense every once in a while, and there's gonna be that game where things don't bounce your way. Batted ball by an offensive lineman, tipped ball by a defensive back that leads to a turnover, a fumble by your running back, a strip sack, a pick six. Things like that happen, and you have to recover from that. So we'll see what happens with Purdue, Kevin. Like you said, I can go through this roster, but their 4 road games, those are going to be bears. They could really be 0-4 in those road games.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Very easily. And then can they run the table at home? I mean, again, I don't think there's any gimme games in the Big Ten. even when you talk about an Illinois team that is not very good, watching Illinois last year when they were on TV, it's not like they just went out there and threw a bunch of Yahoots on the field or Rutgers. These teams go out and play with pride. It's almost, I don't want to say it's a contagious, I play for the Big Ten, because some people are going to argue against you and I that the Big Ten is not the best conference in America. And I will always disagree. Because in Illinois is going to go out and they're going to play hard. The problem is they don't have talent to match most teams in the Big Ten. But that doesn't mean they're not going to go out and play hard. Doesn't mean that they don't think they can win. They're going to go out and play as well as they can. And like I said, you leave a bad team hang around and all of a sudden they get a pick six, or they get a fumble for a touchdown, or they get a blocked field goal, and that momentum keeps riding and riding and riding, and the next thing you know, you're down by 7 to Illinois with 2 minutes to go. It can happen. So, again, Kevin, could Purdue be near the top of the West? Yeah. Could they be near the bottom? Yes. It's a common theme as we went over the West last week and this week. That's all I got on Purdue, my friend.
My last thing, week 1, they're at Nevada. That's not a gimme. Week 2, they play Vanderbilt, which is not a terrible football program now. And then week 3, they play TCU. So there are no gimme games, even in the non-conference. And then, you got your 9 games of Big Ten in there. So schedule-wise, wins improving on last year's record. Again, I have them going 7-5, but I could have easily had them at 6-6. And, takes one upset in my predictions to go 5-7. So this team, I don't think is going to take a huge step up in terms of wins. I think you're going to see even more playmakers, though. I think going forward, like Sindelar's a senior at quarterback this year. I think who's your next quarterback to start feeding all these athletes the ball, and then hopefully you can recruit better defensive players, a better running back, stuff like that going forward. But I think so far I like what Brom has done through 2 years at Purdue. Moving on to Wisconsin. A year ago they finished 8-5. They were also 5-4 in the Big Ten. There was an AP voter that basically showed his ballot. The first AP preseason poll comes out the 19th. I think that's next Monday.
Can't wait for that preseason poll, youngster. Can't wait.
And Troy, he had Wisconsin as the top Big Ten West team. I don't remember where it was. It was like 17, something like that. But, some people will think Wisconsin's the best team. Some people will think Northwestern's the best team. Some people think Nebraska's the best team. Some people, again, there are 6 teams that could win this division. But Wisconsin, you've got, actually, I wanted to, hold on one second here. I wanted to make my little timestamp here to make it easier for the fans. And there we go. So, Wisconsin, like I said, a year ago, 8-5, 5-4 in conference. That 5-4 record tied for second with Purdue. Wisconsin beat them out for second, which not nothing. But regardless, Paul Chryst going into his 5th year, as you would expect, rushing offense. They were 6th in the country. Passing offense, guess where they ranked, Roy?
112th.
Almost 118th. So, as you can guess, I mean, that's Wisconsin for you. When you don't have that legitimate quarterback, not even legitimate, but just someone you can trust. And they couldn't trust Hornibrook. And so he transferred. I thought that was interesting. I really did. Because he kind of transferred knowing that Mertz was coming in, and yet from the looks of things, and this was the next thing I wanted to get to, after talking about the defense, but Mertz isn't even the guaranteed starter week 1. So it's like, well, why'd you transfer if you're Hornibrook? I didn't understand that. Because he's going into his last year. He was going into his last year. And it's like, you could even redshirt. If you lost the job, you could even redshirt. You could play 4 games and still redshirt. So I don't know. I just didn't really understand that. But in any case, This team
No, he was probably tired of Chris riding his you-know-what.
Maybe.
Because he made poor decisions, Kevin.
Yeah.
That was his problem. He made poor decisions. There were times, though, where he looked really good, and then the next week it looked like he didn't know how to play quarterback.
Right.
That was the problem last year with Wisconsin. When they needed a play, Hornibrook couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I think there was one game, and I don't remember what game it was, he made a play, and you and I text back and forth. It's like, now, can you do this for the rest of the year? The answer was no.
Yeah.
He pulled it out of his you-know-what and got lucky. He's not a consistent quarterback.
Right.
And are all of a sudden, are you going to, as a senior, like, oh, I'm a senior, now I'm going to be consistent? No. And to be honest, Chris was probably riding him up and down about things he needed to do, things he was doing wrong. And you know what? He wanted a fresh start. He's like, oh, you're going to go out and recruit this big-time quarterback? Yeah, that's what you do. If you want to get better, you recruit big-time players. And he so happened that he wanted to go to Wisconsin. That's the way that the world works, especially in college football. You know, does Alabama settle, Kevin? They go out and get the number 6 recruit in the country. And let's say we'll just be off the cuff. At right tackle. They get the 6th best right tackle in the country in 2019. Do you think they're going to say, oh, yeah, he's good. Oh, we don't need to go get the 2nd best right tackle in the country in 2020. No, they're going to go out and they're going to try to get number 1 at right tackle. They don't care.
I think at Georgia, Troy, 3 years straight, they landed like top 5 quarterback recruits. And like 2 of them are gone because they understand, like, I have no position here. I lost out the quarterback battle. I need to go somewhere else and start. And I don't blame those guys who go through a battle and lose and then transfer. That I can at least understand. But even teams like Georgia at quarterback will go back-to-back years trying to get the best quarterback they possibly can. So, you know, your job is never guaranteed. Defensively, this team a year ago, Wisconsin, they were good. They just weren't as good as we're probably used to. Like, scoring-wise, they were 34th. Rushing-wise, they were actually 54th. That's very bad for Wisconsin. 22nd in passing, 29th total defense. Again, they were good, but they weren't great, basically.
Statistically, now, Kevin, this is where my intel for Wisconsin can come in.
Yeah.
Statistically, you can read numbers to the fans, and they can sit there and say, wow, well, how did they only finish 5-4? They couldn't get off the field, Kevin. They couldn't make the big play on 3rd down. They couldn't create that turnover. Like 2 years ago when they made that magical run and they were actually in the talk when they got to the Big Ten championship, they were making those plays. They were making plays in the red zone, stopping teams from scoring. They were getting off the field on 3rd down. Last year's team, even though scoring-wise you look at it and say, wow, that's a pretty good scoring defense. You know what it is? But you got to remember, Wisconsin's also a ball control offense. So if you're playing in Ohio State, okay, our offense goes down and gets a 6-minute drive and they kick a field goal. Great. Now our defense goes on the field and Ohio State goes down and scores 7. Okay, well, here we go. Wisconsin doesn't have a quick strike ability. They're going to go down and take another 6 minutes off the clock, kick another field goal. Now Ohio State gets the ball back. They go down and score again. My point here is that there's big chunks of time that come off the clock with this Wisconsin offense, which can help aid and mask a scoring defense number, if that makes any sense to you, youngster.
No, yeah.
They're not just handing the ball back over to another team with 10 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah.
They're putting together drives. They're sustaining drives, getting first downs. They got a really good running back in Taylor. You just hand him the ball. But when teams stacked up Taylor, they didn't have a quarterback to make a play.
Yeah.
So, again, I didn't think they were very good defensively last year.
Right.
If you look just at numbers, they were okay. But I shouldn't say I watched I didn't watch every Badger game. You know I won't watch the cupcake. But I watched most of the Big Ten games, Kevin, and the problem is they could not get off the field. And part of it was, would they have 7 new starters from the year before? Because 5 went to the NFL. And our expectations as Badger fans were in the clouds. Now, they have good backups, and the guys that stepped in did quite admirable. The thing is, they lost a lot of leadership on that defense last year. I'm expecting better things this year.
Yeah. I think they lost someone in their secondary, I think, to an injury last year, too, before the season started, out for the year. I knew that hurt. It was either someone in the secondary, some linebacker. I don't remember. But, yeah, it just takes one injury. It takes one draft class to kind of wipe you out a little bit. And like you said, you could say Wisconsin's defense was pretty average, pretty, sometimes bad. But at the end of the day, it's a Wisconsin defense, and numbers-wise, it'll look good. But numbers-wise in the past, it's been even better. You'll see top 10 numbers. So I think Wisconsin's defense was solid a year ago. I think you're used to elite, and it just wasn't elite a year ago. Quickly to go back to the offense, quarterback thing this past week, just looking at practices, and Jack Cohn was getting the majority of first-team reps, not Graham Mertz.
Oh, brother.
For those that don't know Graham Mertz, he is literally the highest-rated recruit Wisconsin's ever had at quarterback. Obviously, you bring in Russell Wilson from transfer, and that was huge, and we saw what Wisconsin could do with Russell Wilson. But this is literally the biggest, easily by far, the most highly touted quarterback recruit they've ever had. Top 5, some people were saying he is the best quarterback recruit in the class. But as of now, it looks like Jack Cohn, at least according to practice, is going to get the start in week 1. I don't know if he's going to play the first half, Mertz plays the second half. I don't know if Cohn's going to play until he loses the job. I have no idea. But just from a practice rep standpoint, it seemed pretty obvious that Mertz was basically sharing second-team reps with someone else.
Well, here's the thing, Kevin. You got a freshman coming in, and it's hard to go from high school to college and be the man.
And that's
if he's not ready, he's not ready.
Right. That's the other thing is you have to learn a whole new system, and if someone is a junior returning guy with experience and knows the system, who do you think is going to look more? You could see, I'm sure, Graham Mertz in practice is more talented than Jack Cohn, but if he doesn't know half the playbook, what are you going to do? Not run half your playbook during practice with your first-team guy? Or are you going to give the guy in a quarterback battle that knows the entire playbook inside and out, has started games for you last year, the nod right now? So
here's the thing, youngster. As a fan, I want to see what Mertz can do, right? And I know he's more talented than Cohn. I know that. But for since Russell Wilson, Paul Chryst has proven he can win with a game manager. And so this is what I look at. Okay, there's this talented guy named Mertz sitting on the bench. We know he's better talent-wise, but honestly, I don't want him to start, Kevin, until he knows the playbook inside and out.
Yeah.
Because then this team becomes 10 times better. And as a Badger fan, I'm expecting a division title. My expectations every year for Badger football are to win the West.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm being unreal. Not with the way that we can put together offensive lines. And I'm sorry I say we because I'm just a rabid fan right now. But the Badgers get a ton of offensive linemen that are always really good. Always have top running backs. We now have a quarterback, but I don't want this kid going in that's going to cost us a win because he's playing against a Michigan and he's overwhelmed. Because, again, you can run 4 plays against the Michigan defense. Well, they're going to crush you. Because they're going to know this young kid doesn't know the whole playbook, so they're going to put together some fancy blitzes and crush the kid. So I'm okay waiting until Chris is 100% positive that this guy can run the offense, because I think they can win without him. The thing is, will it be 8-4? And I think when Mertz is at his best, it's a 10-win team. As long as they stay healthy. And they continue to have a line and a good running game.
If he's at his best, I think Wisconsin could go win a national title. I think that Russell Wilson at Wisconsin.
Wow, youngster!
I'm dead serious. Like if you look at Wisconsin's past, like you can say at their best, hey, that's a top 10 defense you got there. Hey, that's a top 10 offensive line you got there. Hey, that's a top 10 running back you got there. Yeah, you've got some talent on the outside. You've got talented tight ends. Like the only thing missing is quarterback. And so when they had Russell Wilson, I'd have to go back and look at, stats, numbers, records, but those offenses set Wisconsin records in the history book. And it's like once you have that, that's when you can compete really consistently against Ohio State, against Michigan, against Alabama, against Clemson, against Georgia, against whoever. Because you can score 35 against Ohio State and Michigan and Clemson. If you can't do that consistently,
and you can be down by 10 going into the fourth quarter with a fighting chance.
Right.
A Badger team last year down by 10, the game was over.
Right. I mean that's the difference to me. So if you have a top 10 college quarterback, which I think Graham Mertz will turn into eventually, I don't see why this team can't beat Iowa consistently and twice beat Ohio State, beat Michigan in the big title game, and possibly do more. I don't think that's ridiculous at all. That we haven't seen it from Wisconsin, but we also haven't seen a quarterback like this other than Russell Wilson when they put up historic numbers, and I don't remember exactly how that team finished, but they were damn good. So, I think the sky is the limit with Mertz, with this program, these next 3-4 years, for sure. We could talk about these quarterbacks for an hour alone. But to move things along, the team's wide receivers, they've got good guys there. There's no, unbelievable game breaker, Rondale Moore type guys. But they've got capable receivers. Jake Ferguson, a tight end, is good. Offensive line to finish up the offense. You have to replace 4 offensive line starters, but they also have 4 guys returning that have started in games before. So the cupboard's not bare, and like you said before,
as I said before, Kevin, I shrug my shoulders and say, all right, I'm going to get to know these guys because they're going to be good.
Exactly. So they'll be just fine on the offensive line. I'm not worried about that. Defensively, they've got to replace 2 inside linebackers that went to the NFL a year ago. You got talent up front. You got experience in the secondary. Linebacker may be a little bit of a question, but again, I'm sure those linebackers will, by week 4, be just fine. And Wisconsin, just looking at their schedule, probably by week 3 you want to be good because that's when you play Michigan, but you get my point. So actually, Wisconsin travels to the University of South Florida, which is an hour away from me, to open up the season. So that'll be interesting. I'll get to watch that locally. Realistically, I know it's on ESPN. Actually, I've written about that. But regardless, this team defensively, they just need guys like you said, Troy. They'll be good defensively, but can you make the stops on third down? Can you turn the ball over? Can you get consistent pressure without a blitz? That type of stuff. Because they'll be solid at the worst. But can you go the extra mile to make yourself a top 10 defense and an opportunistic defense that gives your offense the ball an extra one time a game that it otherwise wouldn't? And sometimes that'll lead to a victory instead of a loss. And so like last year, instead of 8-5, maybe you finish 10-3. But part of the reason obviously was quarterback play. There's no question about that. Schedule-wise, this will, round out my talking for Wisconsin, but it could be easier. But But at the same time, you get Michigan, Northwestern, Michigan State, Iowa, Purdue at home. All 5 of those games are against good teams. Michigan, Northwestern, Michigan State, Iowa, Purdue, all at home, which helps. But
no gimme win in there, though.
Right. And then on the road, at Ohio State, certainly not a gimme. At Nebraska, not a gimme. At Minnesota, we saw last year what Minnesota could do. And then at Illinois. So if you talk about games they should really win, at Illinois. Otherwise, it's like, yeah, they could lose to Purdue at home. They could lose to Iowa at home, Michigan State at home, Northwestern at home, Minnesota on the road, Nebraska on the road. Obviously, Michigan they can lose, Ohio State they can lose. So it's not a killer schedule, but it's pretty freaking hard.
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
You're right. It's not a killer bee schedule, Kevin, but you just went down the line. I'm not saying Wisconsin's going 1-8 in the Big Ten, but on paper, you just said it. Where's the only for sure? And again, can you say Illinois is for sure? I guess I can be 90% confident in that.
Right.
So I got one game where I'm more than 60% confident they can win.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be one bad season for this show to have Wisconsin be 1-8 because the old man would be quite grumpy.
I'm sure.
But when you look at the schedule, Kevin, those other 8 games, they could lose.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If I had to pick it
now. On the flip side, I mean, you look at it, you throw the likes of Ohio State in there, the likes of Michigan in there, Michigan State. I don't know if my expectations are a Big West title this year.
Right.
That's tough.
Yeah, if I had to pick it now, I have them going 7-5. I didn't write down conference records. I should. But I have 7-5, and like you said, Troy, I could go back right now and say 6-6, 8-4, whatever. But that's kind of my point. Is Wisconsin could finish atop the division. They also could be 7-5. They also could go 500. They could go 4-5 in conference play. Because again, the only game they really obviously should win is Illinois on the road. Otherwise, 60% confidence they go to Minnesota and win. 60% confidence they beat Purdue when they're at home. But could they lose to Purdue? Sure. Especially if your quarterback play is not up to snuff and your defense does give up 30, and it's like, oh, damn, we got to score. And you could lose 31-28. That can happen. It's not out of the question. So there are very few games Wisconsin should obviously win in the Big Ten, which is...
Yeah, and if they want to win the Big West, Kevin, they've got to take care of business within the division. So yeah. they've got to take care of the other 6 games in the division. That's what they need to do. They got to go undefeated on their side of the conference if they have any hope of going to the Big Ten title game. That would go a long way, and that's not even a guarantee at that point, even if you take care of business. Because when they play their East schedule, it's not easy. You just went over.
Right. Yeah. Michigan State, Ohio State. That's tough.
Yeah. That is probably the hardest draw going against the East.
Right.
So, I mean, it's going to be tough. But if they can take care of business inside the division, get those 6 wins, then lose the 3 in the East, 6-3. The way that we're going about this, Kevin, 6-3 could maybe win that division.
I agree.
Probably tied with someone else. But if you won your games in the division, you're in.
Right.
So that would be my only hope for Wisconsin to get to the Big Ten title game is to win every game in the West. Because I really don't – if I'm going down this right now and you're asking me to pick, I'm not picking them to beat anybody in the East. I'm not. Even if Mertz was the quarterback, Kevin. He's a freshman. He's going to have growing pains. And I've got to realize that when I'm watching as a fan. Now, as an analyst on this show, I might be a little more critical, as I always am. I'm usually more critical about my team you might have to back me down a little bit and say, hey, he's a freshman. But, again, for them to get to the Big Ten title game, they've got to run the table in the West. And if they do that, I think they would have a good shot at going to the Big Ten title. We talked about the wild, I guess we'll call it the wild Big Ten West.
Yeah, I like it.
There's six teams that could win it.
Yeah.
6 teams that are going to beat each other up. 6-3 could be the record that gets you to the Big Ten title game. Hate to say that,
yeah.
But again, there is no dominant team in the West. And we're going to move on to Northwestern and finish up the West unless you got anything else about Wisconsin.
No, yeah, my last thing, if I had to really, truly predict it today, I think 6-3 winning the tiebreaker against some other team will win the Big Ten West. I don't think anyone goes 9-0, 8-1, 7-2. I think the winner truly does go 6-3. And you just beat that other team that goes 6-3 on your schedule. And there you go. You win the Big Ten West on tiebreaker. That's my honest opinion. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that's more likely than a team dominating. So, anyway, getting through to Northwestern, the final team here in the Big Ten West. This team a year ago went 9-5. They went 8-1 in Big Ten play, which is pretty damn dominant. Don't think that happens this year, but Pat Fitzgerald entering his 14th year at Northwestern, which seems a lot longer than I would guess.
And I hope he's there 14 more.
Oh, yeah, same. Statistically, last year, rushing, let me actually, hold on 1 second here. Rushing offense, they were 119th in the country, so they were god-awful. Passing-wise, they were middle of the pack. They were fine. Clayton Thorson, I think, left Northwestern as, well, I know he did. He left as the program's leading passer. And I know the year before that, Justin Jackson, who's on the Chargers now, he left as the program's all-time leading rusher. So that was the question going in last year was, could Thorson carry this team through the air after they lost their best running back they've ever had? Most productive, I should say. And Thorson did well, but the rushing attack was atrocious. And with that, they still went 8-1 in Big Ten play. So things broke right for them. They won plenty of close games, which sometimes that's all you need. Thorson was a senior last year. He's gone now. So it's not given to this kid yet, but this kid, Hunter Johnson, transferred from Clemson a year ago. He lost out to who everyone knows now, Trevor Lawrence, who destroyed Alabama in the title game a year ago. So, you can understand why he lost the job there. He is a former 5-star recruit. As of a couple years ago, he redshirted last year because he literally couldn't play. Since he transferred, didn't get the immediate eligibility. Not that I don't think it would have mattered. I think Thorson would have been the guy anyway. But Johnson now is eligible. And, talk about your Russell Wilson type of guy coming into your program. Not to say Hunter Johnson is going to be Russell Wilson in college, but the quote-unquote experts think he is basically going to be. That he is mobile, but he is a phenomenal thrower. If you're a 5-star quarterback recruit, 4-star guys can be like the 30th best recruit in the country. There's not many 5-stars out there. So to be a 5-star quarterback recruit means you're pretty damn special. Mertz was a 4-star. And yet he was, still by far Wisconsin's best quarterback recruit. Again, this kid's coming in from Clemson, has had a year to sit and watch Thorson and learn the playbook. I think he's going to be the starter week 1. Everyone assumes he's going to be. It's not official yet. But if that's the case, I think the offense will do just fine. Because I think this kid is very talented, and I think you'll see that. And I think defensively, last year Northwestern was good. They weren't phenomenal, but I think it's kind of like Wisconsin standards, not as high. But Northwestern typically has a good defense, and last year they did. It just wasn't great. So that'll kind of be the key this year, too. Obviously, we'll see what Hunter Johnson can do offensively and what they can get out of their running backs. But in general, I think this team offensively will be fine, defensively will be fine. It's just going to be very intriguing to see how this Hunter Johnson kid turns out. This is my pick for those, if you want to bash me a few months from now, this is my pick to win the Big Ten West. I just think that offensively they'll be good, defensively they'll be good, they'll win the games they need to, finish 6-3, and win on a tiebreaker. That's, but again, you can flip your coin and it can go to 4 different teams' ways, and some people think 6. So as far as the offensive line goes, you need 3 new offensive line starters. The running back situation, like I said, rushing the ball last year statistically was terrible, but once Isaiah Bowser came in and was the full-time running back, his last 8 games, he rushed for 866 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he can be productive for you. He's returning. So I think that'll help ease the blow there. I think numbers-wise, it doesn't show that when you look at total rushing numbers. So I think they will be much better this year running the football. And again, you have Johnson at quarterback, 3 new offensive line starters. That's not great, but hopefully they can mend the fences and do okay there. So I think offensively they'll be good. Defensively, the front 7 is good. The secondary has talent. Wide receiver-wise even, I didn't talk about that. They've got experienced wide receivers on the outside. 8 defensive starters return. So
that's the key right there, youngster, for Northwestern.
Yeah.
Down in distance and controlling the game.
Right.
Like you said, they won a lot of close games last year.
Yeah.
And I thought that defense did well at times. You return 8 starters to a defense that has some confidence. I mean, this is a team that was Big Ten West champion. They're going to have swag on defense. And when you look at it, Kevin, to be honest, when you look at offenses in the West, I mean, okay, does Nebraska scare you? Okay, well, they got a little different element at quarterback. Does Purdue scare you? Okay, they're going to throw it around a lot. But if I'm a pass rusher, I'm like, bring on Purdue because I get to pin my ears back and go after a quarterback.
Sure.
And if I'm playing Nebraska, let that quarterback run the option because I want to level him.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at this Northwestern defense, Kevin, bringing 8 starters back. There's no scary offenses in the Big West. I say the Big West, Big Ten West.
I think
so. If I'm Northwestern, I'm taking a building block off last year, and saying, you know what? If I'm Fitzgerald, it's like, you know what? Let's go dominate defensively because we got skill position players on offense, and I'm okay, and Fitzgerald's okay winning by 7. He really is. I think you're going to see a dominating defense from Northwestern, Kevin. It's, again, Northwestern, Fitzgerald's been in this conference for 14 years. He knows what wins ball games. Now, he's kind of going with the sign of the times, right? He's getting a more athletic type quarterback. But the bottom line is, where's the cornerstone of this team this year? It's defensively. 8 starters return. Went young last year, 8 returning starters.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see a very good Northwestern defense. They're going to be tough to beat. Now, I'm not saying they're going 9-0. I'm not saying that.
You just need 6-3. I'll predict it now. You go 6-3. You win the tiebreaker with the other 6-3 team or other 2 6-3 teams.
But could they go 4-5, Kevin?
Oh,
they could.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. No question.
See, that's the thing. I think they're going to be really good, but I'm not going to put them into that. Hey, you're the cream of the crop in the Big Ten West. No, you're a good team, and you should be favored to win the division again. But there's 5 other teams that are going to be knocking down your door.
Yeah. Some people literally think, Troy, this team finishes 6th in the division.
They could.
Yeah.
And if they did at the end of the year when we're doing our show, I wouldn't be like, oh, my God, Northwestern sucked. No.
Right.
There's 6 teams, Kevin. We've talked about it now for 2 weeks. There are 6 teams that could win this division. And you could rank, you could do it this way: Northwestern, Wisconsin, Iowa, Purdue, Nebraska, Minnesota. I could turn around and flip it and say Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, I can go and I can make probably 10 different finishing predictions.
Oh, yeah.
And none of them will come right. But there's 6 teams that could win this division.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to see Minnesota, PJ Fleck do it. So I'm less optimistic on Minnesota than a lot of people are. I think they'll be better. But Minnesota was what they were a year ago, which was...
Well, that's because I jinxed them.
They were 3-6 in Big Ten play a year ago. So I don't think they...
That's because I gave them the ultimate jinx. They were playing good football. And then I had to mention how great they are at home and how hard it is to go to Minnesota and win a ball game. And what they do, they lost by like 28. They got throttled and played like poo. And then I just shut up. So I jinxed Minnesota, and I'm sorry, Gopher fans. I broke my silence this year. Again, Kevin, would things need to work out perfect for that? Sure. They're not going to be one of the favorites to be number 1 in the division. But could they steal a win or 2 here and there? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And if they steal a winner here, there, and they go, what if they're one of those teams that goes 6-3?
Right. I think
very well could be possible.
Yeah. Northwestern, schedule-wise, not that it matters in the Big Ten, but they open at Stanford. I think that'll be very telling. I think it'll also be very telling if Hunter Johnson's playing in Week 1 and he has to go to Stanford. We'll be able to see how good he is. I mean, point blank. This is not a Stanford team that's going to be top 10 in the country, but it's also not a bad team in general. So that'll be very interesting to see. Definitely going to watch every minute of that. And then they get UNLV. The other non-conference game they have is in November randomly. But conference-wise, at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, obviously that's tough. But home-wise, you do have to play Michigan State. It's at home. You have to play Ohio State. It's at home. You have to play Iowa. It's at home. You have to play Purdue. It's at home. You get Minnesota at home. So that's why I kind of lean, and you'll probably laugh at me for this record pick. And if I had to do it again, I'm sure I'd come up with a different record. But if I literally went game by game from what I did whenever I typed this out, 10-2 is what I came up with. And part of that is just if I had to flip a coin and say Northwestern's at home against Iowa, I'd give Northwestern the tilt there. Northwestern's at home against Purdue, I'd give Northwestern the win there. Same thing with Minnesota. Ohio State, no. Michigan State, I think offensively they really need to get better, and supposedly they have, and they are supposed to. But Northwestern at home, yeah, I'll give them the edge there barely. But so that's how I have this team really. I mean, I said, and it's funny because I'm sitting here saying, let's talk about this 4 months from now, but winner of the Big Ten West goes 6-3 and wins on a tiebreaker. And yet when I picked this out, I had Northwestern going 10-2. So obviously I don't have them losing 3 games in the Big Ten. Realistically, though, I think that's more likely that they do lose 3 games in the Big Ten. At Wisconsin, at Nebraska, that's tough. And then Ohio State on top of it, I mean, that could be 3 losses right there. Michigan State could be another. Iowa could be another. Purdue could be another. Minnesota's not a gimme. So,
again, Kevin, they could finish in first or they could finish in 6th.
Yeah. At the end of the day.
And again, I want the listeners to know I'm not trying to skirt around predictions. I'm not trying to skirt around and say, I'm just being, I'm being off my rocker and I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking real.
We'll be different for next week's show with the Big Ten East. Like we'll have definitive.
Yeah, there's some domination over there, but in the Big Ten West, I'm not being flaky. We've done our homework, and it's just like you said, Kevin, Michigan is that Cinderella feel good. People want to root for Minnesota, but like you said, of the 6 teams, I would, if I had to rank them, Minnesota would be number 6. And they'd have to get a lot of lucky breaks to move up the charts into, first, second, or third.
Yeah.
But when you look at the team and you look at the division, if Minnesota does what they were doing at times last year,
Right.
They can play with those 6 teams or those other 5 teams.
If they play up to their
they're
potential,
not outclassed.
They could go 6-3 if they play up to their potential, and that's all I think it will take.
But they could go they could go in those 6 games. They could go 1-5.
No, yeah.
I mean, and again, it's not us just being like, oh, we're being flaky. No, there's good and bad with all 6 of these teams, and we just have to see how things progress. Now, again, this could change with an injury. This could change, with a lot of things. But on paper, doing a preview show, and that's why it's a preview show, on paper, these teams are pretty evenly matched.
Yeah.
And really, they're coin flip games. If I'm a Vegas odds maker, a lot of them are probably pick'ems. Like you said, Kevin, at home, they may get 3.5 points because they're at home.
Sure. Those are those.
And maybe not even that many, depending on the opponent.
Yeah. There are a lot of 60-40 type of games. Like I said, Northwestern at home against Purdue, they should win. Like 60% chance they should win. But very easily, 4 times out of 10, Purdue will go to Northwestern and win. Could one of those times happen this year? And, there's a quote-unquote upset? Sure. So there are a lot of 60-40 games, and, you even mentioned 50-50. There are a lot of those basically coin flip type of games where, slight upsets, there could be tons of those. Just based on Vegas odds, there could be loads and loads and loads of Big West upsets this year.
Well, Kevin, being a Badger fan, I always thought Camp Randall was great home field advantage for the Badgers. But when I look at this year, it's hard for a team to come into Camp Randall and win. But the teams that are coming in, why can't they win?
Right.
And why can't the visiting team win? They can.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just going down the schedule and saying, "Oh, Wisconsin at home. They're through their schedule. They're going to win all those conference games." No, they're not. And that's why I sit here and go, this division is harder to pick than the lottery numbers to win the Mega Millions. Really is. That's all I got, youngster. What else you got?
No, I think that's it. Unless there's something crazy. I mean, if you've listened this long, thank you. Unless you're a Northwestern listener, then obviously that's why you're listening this long. Or you skipped ahead the first 40 minutes to Northwestern. But the other thing I wanted to touch on this show very quickly was Ohio State's quarterback that transferred, Tate Martell, was a big-time quarterback recruit. He said he would fight for the job after Dwayne Haskins left, and he was ready to be Ohio State's next, big quarterback. Ohio State brought in Justin Fields, who was the number 2 overall recruit in his class a couple of years ago, and from Georgia, because he didn't win the job. And Tate Martell's like, yeah, let me fight for this job. You shouldn't transfer here. This is my team. And then like a couple weeks later, he transferred to Miami. And it came out yesterday, as we're recording the show, that Tate Martell lost the job at Miami. And so now it's like, are you going to transfer again? Or what's kind of the deal? It's funny and it's sad at the same time that you transfer to become a starter somewhere and then you lose that job. I can see it as both funny. He got absolutely bashed for it. But I think it's funny and sad. Like, this kid's trying to better himself, and he's just failing at it. But part of it is, as you would say, I'm sure your thought on this, Troy, is that you committed somewhere, you're in a quarterback battle, fight it out. He didn't even battle for the Ohio State job. He just left. He battled for the Miami job, and he lost. So you can always get me going. You can always find something to pull out of my brain. So I'll comment on this real quick. Yeah.
And you hit around the head. If you're going to go play somewhere, and maybe it's the old college coach in me, you've committed to the program. But I may tell you what your role is in this with this team. But if you think that I'm not going to stop, or I'm going to stop recruiting because I now have you, you're totally mistaken.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just an old school coach, but I can't imagine Urban not recruiting that way. And if you're going to a big-time school like Ohio State, you should know they're going after the best. I recruited at a darn little Division III school, Kevin, and I still told my players coming in, I told them when I was going out recruiting the next year, I'm like, I'm going out recruiting guys that are as good, if not better than you. So you better work hard in the off season.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're going to start as freshmen. But why would I want to recruit lesser talent? How am I going to improve my team? Bottom line is, you've committed to the program. Coaches have faith in you. There's a reason I recruited all of my players. Just because I'm going to go out and recruit, okay, so the example, and this isn't true. This is just, I'm throwing an example off the cuff. I would go out and recruit an all-conference forward, Kevin. Just an all-conference forward. Comes in, starts, and now I'm going out to recruit again. Now I bring in an all-state forward.
Yeah.
All right? Got to have this guy. Do I expect that all-conference forward to cry in the corner and say, I'm transferring because you brought in a better player?
Right.
I expect him to fight for it.
Yeah.
Do I expect the all-state guy to be better than the all-conference guy? I would hope. But I don't want to see anybody roll over and give up jobs.
That's the thing with most of these quarterback transfers, Troy. Sorry to butt in, but usually these guys end up losing the job, and then they transfer. I can understand that.
This is what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to say this. I can understand being a college player and being a coach. If you get beat out in a hard-fought battle and your role on that team has diminished, I have no problem signing your transfer. Well, you don't need to sign papers anymore. But I signed transfer papers, Kevin, because of the way I was building the program. You know what? Last year, you were the guy. Sorry, I went on and recruited 5 players better than you. Guess what? You're my third guy off the bench now.
Right.
Coach, I want to play somewhere else then. Fine, I understand. I totally understand that. I want what's best for the player, but I've got to look out for my team, my program, not for every individual.
Yeah.
Even though I care about every individual, and I don't know if this makes sense to anyone, but at the end of the day, when I was sitting behind that desk in my office, it was about the program and what is best for the program. It never crossed my mind, oh, I might hurt the youngster's feeling if I recruit this guy. I better stop recruiting this guy that's an All-American. No! I'm doing what's best for the program. And as I butted back in on you, I understand when players want to transfer when their role has diminished. But one thing I can't stand is what you're talking about, Kevin, and these players transferring. Hornibrook, for example.
Right.
What are you doing? Battle the kid.
Right.
You got no kahunas or what? And that's what irks me, is that these players they become big babies. You know, I'm nearly 50 years old, and you'll never see it now because if it happens, people go to jail. But when somebody made you mad, you fisticuffed it behind the school. You went to the playground and you punched a guy in the face. That's what happened when I grew up. And I'm not saying that's the right way to do things, but my point, Kevin, is you got to be tough and you got to battle. And if you don't want to battle and you want to cry and transfer, you're going to have a very long life after football because the world is a cruel place. And I hate to be that blunt about it. Kevin, you're in the writing industry. You know, it's all a bed of roses, isn't it? You're just getting jobs handed to you. You can write whenever you want, and there's no competition for a byline on any website, right? You have no competition out there.
No.
Screw that. You've got to fight with your blood and guts to get your byline out there.
Yeah.
I'm in sales. Do you think my money's handed to me every Friday? No. I've got to go out and compete against people. And I've got to be cutthroat, and I've got to go out there, and I've got to make money. So, I love sharing. I hope that story made sense to people. The real world is just like a quarterback battle in college football. And so if they're going to quit in college, what are they going to do when football's done? I'm done. You got me all worked up now, youngster. See what you did. I'm done. I got to get a drink.
Yeah, I figured. I don't know why players transfer before they lose jobs. That doesn't make sense to me, especially in today's world of college football where you can even play in 4 games and still get a red shirt and not lose a year of eligibility. I mean, you could know that Graham Mertz is coming in, and you know that you might start the first 4 games and then eventually, let's try this kid out. And you could still redshirt after that and transfer and keep your eligibility. I mean, so in today's day and age, it's even more ridiculous to not stay and fight for your job. Once you lose, adios. I get it, 100%. But at least fight for it. I think Troy and I are on the same page there. So, anyway, we'll cut this podcast off here. Next week, we will start with the Big Ten East. And the Big Ten East, let me see here. Bottom 4 teams, Rutgers, Indiana, Maryland, Michigan State. So, we will have our clear-cut thoughts on where those teams might finish.
That could be a quick show.
There are things I want to get to for sure.
Well, again, nothing against those teams, Kevin, but everyone knows that listens to the show, they're Big Ten people. We're talking about the bottom 4 teams outside of Michigan State. Do those other 3 really have a chance against Penn State? Do they have a chance against Michigan? Do they have a chance against Ohio State? No.
Right.
Do they even have a chance against Michigan State? Maybe. Not really, though.
Yeah, Michigan State, I think, will be definitely better this year.
Fire D'Antonio!
Yeah. Yeah. So, we will get...
I don't think that's coming up next week.
No, probably. Well, I'm sure we'll say the words in a joking manner. But in any case, next week's show, Michigan State, Maryland, Indiana, and Rutgers are the bottom 4 from the Big East. And then finally we'll get to the top 3 in the Big Ten East. And then it'll be time to start the college football season. So
yeah, before we start college football season, though, Kevin, we've got a fantasy football league that's out there. Let the listeners know how they can join that. 20 teams. It's filling up fast. I think we're at, 8 teams right now, Kevin?
Yeah. 8 teams
12
now, 12
slots left.
Yeah. At Youngster Old Man on Twitter, Youngster Old Man on Facebook, youngsteroldman.home.blog is our own personal page. So there are a number of ways to look and see and click the link and take 2 minutes to click the link, join league, you're done. So, again, it's a live draft. You don't have to be there. It's a 20-teamer. There's not, 3 flexes, 6 wide receivers. It's a very standard league. I even decreased the bench a little bit to make the draft go faster. I actually enhanced the draft timer to 60 seconds instead of 90 to make the draft go faster. Because I know 20 teams is huge. It is.
Yeah, like I said, Kevin, after my 4th pick, it might almost be more beneficial for me to let the computer auto-pick after I rank my players.
Yeah. So, yeah, join the league. It's free. It's on ESPN. If you have an ESPN account, it'll literally take you less than 2 minutes to join the league once you click on the league. Actually, once you click on the link, then it'll take you about 10 seconds to join the league. So if you don't have an ESPN account, it'll take you 2 minutes. So it doesn't take long.
All right, youngster. We're going to let the listeners go.
Yep.
If you enjoyed the show today, for the youngster, I am the old man. We'll get back at you next week. Have a good one, everyone.